I see you. I see you. That's going to be very important as I talk about my research. But I was touched by that notion of I see you. Acknowledging that you are important enough for me to connect with you. And even Einstein said that the myth of humanity is our perceived disconnection. We are living the lie of disconnection when we are connected. And what happened when I got is I was a bit depressed. I came back home to being marginalized and invisible. I came back home to a familiar hostility. And so I stayed in my home a bit, to such a degree that the women that traveled with me would call my sister and say, has she left the house yet? And I had not. So finally one day I had this experience which forces me out of my home. My young daughter runs in and she says, there's a boy outside. He says he's going to beat up Nadim. That's her brother and my son. And he says he's going to pee on the car too. This could happen in the hood. So I had to go outside. So I go outside and they're standing in the middle of everything is, you know, these young brothers that are just kind of steady, looking tough. Nobody's over 10 years old. So I walk over to the ringleader and I say to him, excuse me, brother, has my son done something that I need to know about? He said, yeah, I want to know if he got some kind of eyeball problem. I said, what did you say? I said, I know Ebonics, I don't know what he said. I said, what did you say? He said, I want to know if he got an eyeball problem. What he staring at? I said, wait a minute. I mean, you want to beat my son up and pee on a car because he was looking at you? Because my son was looking at you, you want to beat him into the ground? He could have been looking at you because he's got a little hoop outside. You know, we had a little basketball hoop. Maybe you want to play one-on-one. He could have been looking at you because maybe you want to go in and play some little video games. You got a little Nintendo in there. Maybe he could have been looking at you because down the street is a park and y'all can go down the park and kick it. He could you for anything. Oh. I got a little therapeutic there. But I'm giving them, the same lecture most of you give them. Listen, we got to live in this community. We got to live as a village. We can't hurt each other. We got to protect each other. The whole thing. And then it occurs to me when I go back inside, as I'm formulating what I'm going to look at. What is the research, Joy, that you want to look at? As I'm formulating that, I recognize one of the symptoms of post-traumatic slave syndrome. I recognize something called vacant esteem. Vacant. I look at that because I remember being in the villages with the floor and the tattered clothes, and I remember, I see. And then I started to look at what happened when I got back to America. Because when I got back to America, African Americans were saying, what you looking at? What you looking at? I see you. What you looking at? Isn't that an interest? What had happened to this little 10-year-old boy that he could not withstand a gaze? What had happened in those fragile little group of years between birth and 10 that he would have so much rage about a glance? And then I began to realize what boy was so angry about. He wasn't angry at white people, you see. He was angry with my son. But why was he so angry with my son who looked at him? Because there's something we all know in this room. It's something that black people can do. We know our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers and our mothers and our fathers. We all somehow, another one of those things we normalize, which is supernatural in some ways. We can read people, can we not? We can read you. Not only can we read you, we can walk into a situation and go, whoa, it's feeling thick in here. We can walk into, my sister and I can walk into a supermarket and watch a situation and go, now you checked her out, right? Yeah, she came in, you see that man, you see that woman he with, that's his wife over there, right? Okay. Getting ready to get real up in there. Meanwhile, there's a white woman standing behind me going, did you see someone come in? There's a reason for that. I'll tell you the reason for that, because privilege allows her or him to not have to concern themselves with what's going on. That's not so with you and I. So I'm looking at this notion of what you're looking at. And I know, we represent a lot of different understandings, but I remember reading in some religious scripture something about black people. And in this statement, it says, the black man is like the pupil of the eye. surrounded by a sea of white, but it is the pupil which is the sight. It beholds what is before it. So what that little boy could reflected back at him is what he hated about himself. Because you see, our sense of esteem based on the significant appraisal of those closest to us, because I am not who I think I am, and I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think that I am. So that little boy thought that my son thought of him as me, and he hated him for it. He hated him so much that he wanted to hurt him. He wanted to hurt him for revealing back to him what he hated most in himself. He didn't look at white people because they reflected back, but we do. That's why I don't like you. That's why I hate you, because you remind me of the nothing I am. That's why. And he's 10 years old. And it doesn't start at 10, it starts at 3. But this is part of what I call post-traumatic slave syndrome.
For over 400 years, white supremacy has weaponized one of the oldest tactics in the book, divide and conquer. And sadly, Black America has often been the battlefield. It started during slavery. Enslavers created division through colorism, granting lighter-skinned Black people slightly better treatment, jobs inside the house, or the illusion of proximity to whiteness. Darker-skinned people were forced into harsher labor in the fields. This wasn't accidental. It was strategy. If Black people turned against each other, they were less likely to unite and rebel. After emancipation, the Black elite began to emerge, often lighter-skinned, educated, and closer to white institutions. Some joined organizations like the Boule, founded in 1904, modeled after white secret societies. While many members did contribute to civil rights, these groups also drew a line between the acceptable Black class and the rest of the community. Then came the Great Migration. Millions of Black Southerners moved north, chasing opportunity and escaping Jim Crow terror. But they weren't always welcomed by the Northern Black elite. Southern Blacks were often seen as unrefined or too country. This bred resentment, classism, and separation, just the way the system liked it. Fast forward to today, and we see another battlefield: Black men versus Black women. While white supremacy has assaulted both through mass incarceration, economic deprivation, and systemic abuse, many of us have turned on each other. Black men are blamed for abandonment. Black women are accused of being too independent. These gender wars were designed by a system that fears a unified Black family and community. The harsh truth is this: white supremacy doesn't always need a hood or a badge. Sometimes it just needs division. Color versus color. Class versus class. Gender versus gender. Region versus region. Because unity is dangerous. Unity sparks movements. Unity shakes systems. Unity builds nations. It's time we call out the strategy. It's time we break the cycle. Because our real enemy was never each other. It was always the system that taught us to look sideways instead of forward, and to fight each other instead of fighting back. Tell me what you think about this topic. Hope you find the information in this video informative. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. Thanks for watching.